Hey, Ron. Johnny, how are you? Good, man. Good.
All right, let's start our meeting and stand for the pledge. Doug, do the honors, please.
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a moment. Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to, basis industrial first, but I'd like to start with Homeland Towers. I'd like to adjourn that to the applicant for Homeland Towers requested that we adjourned the public hearing until September, based on this letter. And that's when the CEQA resolution hopefully will be done. The board will adjourn the continuation of this public hearing until September 17th. Our September 17th meeting by the request of the applicant's representative in a letter dated August 12th. Public comments will be heard at the continuation of the public hearing on September 17th at 7 or soon thereafter as possible. So I need a motion to?
No.
No motion.
I don't think so, do you?
You know, if in doubt, take a motion, right?
Motion to...
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
To September 17th.
To September
Yep.
17th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we can get into the basis industrial. All right. Basis industrial on application, on Route 9D, application ZB24003. The applicant is seeking the following area variances for redevelopment of 4.98 thereabout acres of property is located in the general business zoning district. No construction activity is proposed within the R15 zoning district. The redevelopment shall consist of the demolition of the existing Red Pepper Diner, the Orange County Transit buildings, and for the construction of a 112,584 square foot, two-story self-storage facility with a lower basement level, a 2,276 square foot fast food establishment, and a 3,045 square foot car wash. The existing Sunoco station and food mart shall remain. The additional project improvements will include parking, drive aisles, lighting, landscaping, and associated amenities. Should I go through all these other things? The floor ratio and...
You don't need to. The record will reflect what the relief
Thank you.
is
I
that's
get
being sought.
tongue-tied reading all this stuff. Okay. I'll just mention it. I won't go into the paragraphs, but the floor area ratio, requested variance for that. The boundary setback for the drive-through, off-street parking, off-street loading, maximum building height, and the monument sign. The lands affected by this application are shown generally in the tax maps in the town of Fishkill, and they're all listed here in the application. Okay, sir, you can have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Lee Lefkowitz from the law firm Zarin and Steinmetz. And with me tonight on behalf of the applicant, I have Marino Velarde, the architect, Corey Chase, our traffic consultant, and Zach Kem, our engineer. We're now here on a continuation of the public hearing. I know that your board's heard a lot about this application already, so I'm not going to be redundant and go over the variances and the factors for each one. I'll try to home in on the homework you gave us last time and what we're here for tonight. So I know last time you left us with mainly, I think, technical questions about the variances we were seeking, and I'm pleased to report that we now have our whole team here with us, so they're available for you. I won't take up too much airtime here at the outset. I'll make them available to you to ask your questions, as well as to put any color on some answers that I think we've already given you in our August 6th letter and submission. In particular, I know you asked for a floor plan, which we provided. I'm happy to report that the county, on its referral, has weighed in. We had that letter, and we provided that to you. One thing in particular that I want to highlight is I know that many of the questions last time around dealt with parking, traffic flow on the site. We're pleased to report that the county actually indicated in their referral letter that we've got more than adequate parking on the site. So that confirms what we've asserted here, that we think that the site is adequately parked. And Corey is here to answer questions that you may have about circulation on the site. So we're happy to have those discussions today. One thing that I do want to add to your homework tonight is, in addition to asking that at the end of this you grant the variances, we note that the one item that the county did have a recommendation on was on the monument signs, and we would just ask that your board override that comment and grant the variance for the monument signs. Given that we're only asking for one additional sign, and given the amount of frontage on the street, we think it's appropriate to have the two signs located there. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions myself, as well as our consultants are here and happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Oh, we have plenty of questions. But one of the things that came to light today is this letter, okay, from the attorney representing your tenant. Okay, have you received a
Yes.
copy of this? And these other things are, we still need to address. This changes everything, okay? And the thing is, you stated that the applicant's lease was up in 2026, and this whole plan is based on that. This applicant's letter states, goes out to 2037. It's a big difference. Now, this plan does not address, you know, we're concerned about the parking around the food mart, but it doesn't address the deliveries for the food mart, you know, the Drake's truck or anything like that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this plan the way it sits with this issue. Now, I'm going to ask the tenant to, I want to see a copy of the lease, and I think that's also got to be turned over to the planning board also. But if that's true, and I would recommend to you that if that's accurate, you go back to the planning board before we spend any more time on this. That's my recommendation. You know, like I said, I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this plan the way it sits with this issue outstanding.
So let me respond to a couple of points there I think that are important. One is I do believe that at the last public hearing, it did come to light the 2037 date. In fact, as I understand it, the tenant was in the room the last time around and indicated to your board, and I believe the attorney from my office, Corey, who was here, confirmed that it's 2037. We have since looked at the lease, happy to provide a copy to you. We didn't see anything in there related to ensuring that the gas station has a particular number of parking spaces. I'll touch a little bit more on that in a second, but I just wanted to give you that piece of comfort. As for the date, so that didn't just come to light today in this letter. That came to light last time around. And we totally agree with and understand, Mr. Chair, your point. We are happy to go back to the planning board because you are absolutely right. When it comes to site plan, we thought then that the lease expired sooner than it did, and we're happy to go back and clarify that and address any concerns they may have. That's in particular, Mr. Chair, in relation to that curb cut and when it was going to be closed up. So respectfully, we would still ask that your board act because that is sort of a very separate question from the discrete issues we're dealing with here, which adequate parking and setbacks and height and FAR, which we think can be addressed on the one hand, and then we're happy to go back to the planning board and address issues that may pertain more particularly to
He
that.
also mentions in this letter that he has, what is it here, certain areas on the overall site for parking, he's got access to, he's got commitments to that.
So we took a look at it, so we weren't sure what he's referring to, but we did take a look at the lease, and again, I'm happy to provide it to you. But again, I'll put that in the category of if we're while we have Corey here to talk about circulation and traffic, that really is a planning board issue. And what we're trying to deal with
And
here.
that's why I feel, I'm sorry to cut you
Yeah,
off
no,
here,
it's
but
fine.
that's why I feel that this needs to go back, before we spend any more time on this needs to go back to the planning board to address that.
So the only thing I would disagree with you, Mr. Chair, on is the sequencing there. And so I don't see why your board can't act on the variances, which are a totally separate question from circulation on the site, or even the issue of any entitlements that this particular tenant may have pursuant to his lease. In fact, I will add, even if we're in front of the planning board, although I'm happy to, we will, and I'm happy to deal with this issue in front of the planning board, a private dispute between two private parties in their lease is really, a municipality typically wouldn't intervene.
The town does not want to get involved in that.
Exactly, Mr.
Absolutely
Chair.
right.
So, for purposes of your board and tonight, the question is, are there adequate parking spaces, and are we entitled to our parking variance? And on that particular issue, I know we're only asking for a parking variance related to the self-storage. The gas station will have the same number of parking spaces after as it does
How
today.
can you have the same number of parking spaces, 2 parking spaces for a gas station, no loading dock, no loading facilities to unload trucks and so forth?
And that's the way it is today, Mr. Chair. So that's not
Well,
changing.
Today, and I'm very familiar with the site, okay, they don't have much activity going on there today. It's basically a shutdown site. So there's no need for parking, or it's never been an issue. But now you're creating an issue.
Ron, if I may?
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I think what we're missing here is, currently, if you look at that site, okay, can you put that site up on the board? Maybe
Let's
people will
see.
understand.
If I can figure
it a
this
bit
out,
more.
sure I can, sure can.
Just the site plan showing the
Yep.
overall, you know?
And I'm sorry, I don't want to control the conversation.
No,
It's
no,
just the
that's fine. I
support
just
here
think-
that, you know.
Okay, over by the gas station.
Yep.
Currently, where that building is, to the left of the building and behind the building, there's kind of like wide open concrete area, okay? Between there and I think that's Orange County Transit Building that's beyond, okay? I myself have seen cars, school buses pull in there and park back there because their space is there. It's now under your new plan, okay? You have an entrance and roadways and driveways. That parking goes away, okay? So now this business is going to suffer with not having any adequate parking for people to come in, get their sandwiches, get their donuts, their coffee, whatever they do, okay? So they're losing areas to park because of this development, okay? Now, you don't want to provide them any more parking. You want to take away 106 parking spaces from what's required by town code. Okay, now I understand, self-storage only needs X amount of space, this one, but you're neglecting to look at what this tenant is losing. And we have to, as a board, when we're gonna look at this variance for parking, we have to take that into consideration.
So respectfully, I would actually suggest quite the opposite. So
Excuse me?
I would actually suggest quite the opposite. Now, hang on a second. I'm just the lawyer. I'm happy to have our traffic consultant come on up here and explain what he would explain if we were in front of the planning board dealing with this same issue of it. Is there going to be enough circulation there and enough parking there for that business to be all right? I'm happy to have him do that. But I could just tell you from a legal perspective as a lawyer, the thing that is driving the need for a parking variance is the code's requirement for a certain number of parking spaces for the self-storage. The number of parking spaces that currently exist at the gas station site is not changing, and that's pre-existing, and there is no request here nor requirement here for a parking variance relative to the gas station. So the variance we're requesting and the code provision we're asking to be varied is specific to the self-storage. And that's what the county looked at in its letter. They're opining that the self-storage doesn't really need that many parking spaces, and so our variance is an appropriate request. And I think what your question is more pertaining to is, well, is the site well planned such that the gas station will be all right? Is there enough circulation and is there enough parking? And again, we're happy to go back to the planning board and deal with that question.
Right. But your variance for parking, right here it says for proposed uses on the project site. It does not say for the self-storage unit. Project site, restaurant, whatever is on that site is what this variance is for. okay? You want me to give you a variance to eliminate 106 spaces, when all I'm doing is asking you guys to provide a few extra spaces for the tenant on that project site. So, in essence, you know, this is the whole site. The variance is referring to the site, not the self-storage.
So, but the code provision that's requiring the variance is the code provision that requires extra spaces for the self-storage. And I'll note that the county planning letter actually says we have too many spaces and recommends eliminating them. And as far as the whole site is concerned, as you're indicating, what the county planning letter is effectively saying is you've got too many spaces on this site. We think the restaurant's probably got too many spaces. So in our opinion, and again, I'll have Corey come up here and talk about this a little bit, there's more than adequate spaces on the site for the site to be all right, such that someone could go and park somewhere else on the site and there'll be adequate parking there to be able to walk from establishment to establishment there. I don't want to get too hung up on this particular issue. I'm sure you've got more questions, and I want to give Corey a chance to come up here and talk about that a little bit. But
Okay,
as the
we'll
lawyer,
beat him up too.
as the lawyer, I really want to focus your board on the very discrete question we're asking you. And look, if your board's position is, we're still not comfortable, Lee, you're not persuading me, we'll provide you that lease, and we would ask perhaps that we have an opportunity between now and next month to be permitted to speak with your counsel about this particular issue, because this jurisdictional issue is really a legal one. So maybe that's something you could permit us to do over the next 30 days so we could hammer that issue out. And we're happy to go back again in front of the planning board. But so I don't want to get too hung up on this.
You will have to go back to the planning board, but we're also want to know about, where's the unload, where they're going to unload? We're going to deliver soda, beer.
So why don't we
Where are
answer
they gonna
those
do that?
questions right now? You want to come up and talk about this a little bit? Yeah, why don't we answer them now? Thank you.
Is it a big deal to add a few spaces for the tenant? That's my question.
Well, yeah, and I think what Lee just mentioned was, we're getting conflicting information. So, we discussed stuff with the planning board, the county planning board. They actually asked us to reduce the amount of parking spaces provided. So, we took that into consideration with developing the scheme overall to the site, and the fact that there will be some interaction between the uses. We do have the 2 dedicated spaces directly adjacent to the fuel station. We also have the 7 spaces that are located immediately adjacent.
Yeah, by the car wash.
Yeah, that's correct. And so I'm not sure why this isn't closing. I'm trying to make it bigger for you guys, but not having much luck.
So you're suggesting that there's enough spaces, like, across the 4 acres for people to park and walk over?
Yeah, and so you can see there's an extensive sidewalk and crosswalk network throughout the entire development, and that was...
In my opinion, it sounds like the gentlemen are talking about in real time. So in real time, if someone's stopping at a Quick Mart to pick something up, they're not necessarily going to be parking, 500 yards away so that they can walk, over to the gas station.
Completely agree. And so, we can certainly look, there's a curbed area that's, directly adjacent here. We could certainly look at adding some additional parallel stalls in this area. Again, it was our professional opinion between the 2 stalls adjacent to the building, the 7 stalls for the car wash, aside from the employee or 2 that are going to be working at the car wash, nobody's going to be parking adjacent to the car wash. It's a drive-through car wash. They're all going to be sitting in their car, driving it through the tunnel. Occasionally, maybe somebody will park here to towel their car off after. But generally, they're going to have the utilization of these spaces, which is, again, why we provided some crosswalk and some sidewalk to get that additional pedestrian circulation.
Is there a back entrance into the Quick Mart or no?
I believe, but I don't think it's for customers. I believe it's emergency access only to the rear of the building. I believe the only customer entrance is where this arrow is located adjacent to the front of the building. And again, the on-site circulation, the overall layout of the site, we went through several iterations with the planning board and its consultants. It was really a big focus. Number of access points and the way these uses were going to be interconnected to one another. And one of their primary concerns was the existing service station and convenience store and the way that access is today. The primary feedback we got from them is they felt like it's uncontrolled. And they wanted more control over that access. They wanted it better defined, and they wanted the whole area in and around the existing convenience store to be better controlled. So that's why you'll see a lot of channelizing striping, which was really put there to designate where the traffic lane should be, where people should go. So there isn't that sort of, as you referred to it earlier, sir, that the open asphalt, the open concrete area where people can kind of park wherever they want, load wherever they want. They wanted to provide a more dedicated area, a more defined area for people utilizing the site after it's redeveloped. So it's clear to customers and patrons both, where they should be, where they should park, and have it be much more defined than it is today.
So you got 2 spaces there by the convenience store. One of them's for the guy working there. Now, have you been to that convenience store?
I've never been in it, sir. I've been by it, though.
Have you seen the traffic going in and out of there?
I have, and we did traffic
'Cause
counts
I
there.
have too.
And again, that was the primary concern was remediating that access as it exists today, because the planning board engineer, the planner for the planning board, as well as many of the board members themselves, as well as their conversations with DOT, if that site were to be proposed as new today, it certainly wouldn't be allowed to have the access that it does today. It's something that's grown over the years. It's been there for a good amount of time, and the road, as it gets busier and busier, the access as it exists becomes more of an issue. So there was a lot of discussion over the course of many meetings about how that access was going to evolve and be developed. And this is ultimately between the planning board engineer, ourselves, and DOT, the access scheme that was settled upon.
Well, why didn't you provide access to the gas station from the access road going into the storage facility? Why didn't you provide that as an entrance to the pumps?
Like right there?
Right through here. And again, it was, they wanted to potentially provide, this area for loading and unloading for the fuel truck as well as the delivery vehicles, and to provide, a better break point. It's something we can go back and ask the planning board again, based on our initial discussions, they wanted this driveway throat to come back to the rear area towards the car wash and had that entrance be made through
Because
there.
I would think it'd be easier for the truck, instead of backing the truck up, be easier for the truck to get out of there also. I mean, that's just
Stacking.
my opinion. I mean, that's not part of the request here, but I mean, you're talking about congestion, and the congestion is the reason why you have the minimum number of parking spaces. So, I'm asking these questions because, I need to understand here, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not buying it, personally, So, I just don't think that that's enough parking for a convenience store where people coming in and out of there all day long,
And again, as you heard earlier, we're maintaining the existing parking for the convenience store. As I mentioned, we can certainly look at adding some additional parallel stalls. You have the people that choose to fuel their vehicle, park, and then go inside the convenience store. You're going to have the additional 7 stalls adjacent to the car wash. So, really, between that and, as I mentioned before, we're receiving a little bit of conflicting asks from the municipality, in that the planning board asks us to reduce the number of parking, the county planning board asks us to reduce the amount of parking, and we're coming here and hearing that we don't have enough parking.
We're not asking for 50 more spaces.
No,
We're
I understand,
asking
sir.
for a couple of spaces.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I think that at a minimum we can get 3 or 4 against this area right here. Based on the width and the existing cutout of the curb, there's certainly enough room to put in parallel stalls right here. We can certainly fit those in without any issue. And we'll look to see if there's any other way that we can potentially reorient this, to gain one more potentially directly adjacent to the building.
Now, that curb cut's going to remain until 237? End of lease?
Our understanding is, sir, yes, that's correct, until the end of the lease.
Okay. That's a big thing, too, for getting that truck in and out of there.
And that truck
And
is
I'll be
there-
honest with you, everyone wanted that closed except for me. I was the one that was fighting both the board and DOT, saying we have to maintain at least egress out to 9D directly from the service station. Their preference was that it be cut off in its entirety, but there was a lot of back and forth. And again, I told them, you have to have at least exit out onto 9D. You can't just cut it off in its entirety, that was their preference, was that we just curb the entire frontage of the gas station and then have this be the only exit, or the only entrance rather, and then have all exiting movements done off Pappas Lane.
I mean, just looking at congestion and pedestrian safety, backing that truck all the way around rather than just pulling right out onto 9D. It's a big thing. So I'm glad to see that that's going to remain.
Speaking of trucks, can you explain the statement in the letter that the tenant sent in about the size of the trucks that are coming in, the fueling trucks? I mean, I will say, just in passing, and I'm familiar with the site, and I really would respectfully ask that we stop saying, well, we're not taking away parking. Essentially, you're taking away a whole bunch of parking because you're developing the property. So I understand what you're saying, that technically, under the lease or whatever, there should be, there's only X number of spaces, but there's acreage behind that behind that gas station. So I just respectfully ask that, in real time, for people who live here, people who utilize that station, you are essentially taking away parking spaces. So I understand what you are saying, but I ask that you also understand what we are saying, is that because of the development of this property, you essentially are taking away from this particular business, this particular aspect of that project. But what is kind of concerning to me is, like, my husband and I drove by and was like, whoa, where's I guess it's called stacking. I think he called it stacking. Like, where are all these cars going to be waiting while somebody's just pumped their gas and ran in to get a cup of coffee? So they're kind of waiting, I mean, I'm not sure that, and I don't think that's in our purview, but that did come to mind, especially if, there's not those numbers of parking spaces, that sometimes people can wait in those parking spaces for that. But I would like an explanation of the size of the fueling trucks.
Yeah, certainly. I saw that comment in the letter today. We use a 9,200 gallon tanker truck, which is the largest tanker truck for typical fuel station deliveries. We'd be happy to consult with the operator. I'm not personally aware of a larger fuel delivery truck. So, again, this is what we use for all, not generic, but all, brand name fuel facilities. I know it's Sunoco. So again, if they're getting a truck, it may have a larger tank on it, which is slightly above 9,200 gallons, and may have a 3-axle trailer, but the length of the trailer should be the same as what we modeled.
I think if the parking space in front of, instead of by the car wash, was by the food mart, I think that'll address a lot of my concerns, personally.
Yeah, and again, sir, we hear you loud and clear about the additional parking adjacent to the convenience store.
Just move them.
We'll certainly go back and we'll look at this layout. We'll see where we can fit some additional parking in.
I think part of my concern too is if we're looking at a potential lease expiration date of 2037, there is talk right now of a huge development going in just down the road, overtaking what used to be one of the state prisons into a lot more residential units, which is going to bring a lot more traffic and a lot more flow to that area, specifically for people trying to get to the train station in I-84. So if we're switching to 2037 as the lease expiration for the tenants that are there right now, and if we're looking at the traffic flow and we're looking at only 2 parking spaces, this could exponentially increase should that go forward before 2037.
And again, we part of the reason, and we heard, and then you brought up queuing and stacking for the pumps earlier. Again, that was part of the reason why you'll see this whole area being curbed and really trying to delineate, whether it's the car wash, the self-storage, or the restaurant, delineating each use into its own area so that while there is some interconnectivity between the two, between the shared drive aisles that you can go between the uses, we also wanted to make sure that each one had its own circulation area so that that activity could be as self-contained as it can be and wouldn't, we didn't want to put the loading zone for the self-storage directly adjacent to the car wash so that, people are trying to back into the self-storage and people are trying to circulate to get into the car, things like that. We did try to lay this out, with as much separation as we could. But again, we heard your concerns loud and clear. We'll certainly, I know that we've discussed going back to the planning board and those things, but we can certainly look to see if we can add some additional spaces in and around the convenience store as part of that.
Yeah. If you could come up with some more spaces, I think that would go a long way into making a lot of us here happy.
Well, one of the other comments that was made last time was that island along 9D. Excuse me. That will,
You're referring to the,
no, in front of the gas pump.
Oh, sorry.
That would be implemented at the end of the lease in 2026.
37 now. It changed.
Right. Now, is that island going to be implemented at the end of the lease in 2037?
no, that island is going to be implemented now as part of this development
This is in
proposal.
front of the pumps there, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So and I apologize, I can't get the menu to
Yeah,
go away.
That thing is blocking it.
But
Can you hold it?
Yeah. there we
yeah,
go.
so
Yeah.
as both the DOT and the planning board asked that we extend the sidewalk along the entire site frontage down to the corner at Pappas Lane. So in order to facilitate that sidewalk extension, we are proposing that island and proposing a dedicated pedestrian crossing. Gets you all the way to the corner of 9D and Pappas Lane, and then we're actually proposing a crossing of Pappas Lane and then a crossing of 9D at the signalized intersection. Those were both requests of the planning board.
Anybody else have any comments? Doug?
No, I think I'm okay right now.
Johnny?
No, I think we've addressed it all. For me, I live about a mile away from the location, so the other day we had a fueling truck and a Manhattan beer truck pull in at the same time. Now, there was just chaos. Nobody knew where to go. Now it's overflowing into 90, with traffic. So I think if we have those designated spots that they're looking for, I think that would alleviate.
Yeah, agreed.
lot of that.
It's certainly, sir. We can,
Yeah.
again, we can work to designate, some of these areas.
They're just pulling in and
Right.
first shot
Stop
they get.
wherever
right,
they- right, wherever
both
they
of
may
them. And then
land.
this fueling truck's trying to turn around, back up, and meanwhile you got a gridlock of 3 cars trying to get around or pull into the location.
Certainly, yeah. I can completely understand where that would complicate things, and that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. So
Yeah,
understood
other
on
than
that
that's
as well,
really-
sir.
I think we've
Structure.
pretty much brought out all of our concerns. I mean, it's not an easy thing to address here, but these are things that we're looking at, and I think it needs work, to be honest with you, I think let's just start with going back and getting asking the tenant to give us a copy of the lease.
Mhm.
And that's got to go in front of the planning board and us, okay? And I think this thing is, I would like to see this tweaked a little bit, okay?
So, Mr. Chair, respectfully, that all sounds fine. Why don't I propose this? Why don't we tweak it, as Corey indicated we would? Let us get you a copy of the lease. I would ask that we be permitted to, in the interim, over the next 30 days, have discussions directly with your council to council, just so that we could hammer out these jurisdictional issues, because I will add much of what Corey spoke about today. By the way, I acknowledge no board wants to be told, well, this is in that board's purview and this is in the other board's purview, but I will say that much of what Corey spoke about today was discussed at length with the planning board. Their own traffic consultant really hammered in on this, particularly when it comes to site circulation. So there were other comments made that I just heard between you and Corey regarding parking spaces, which is within this board's purview. So let us go back and take a look at that. Let us get you a copy of the lease. We would ask that we come back here in September with those questions answered. I don't want to lose the momentum that we have here before this board. But again, we're happy to also.
I might remind you that a key element here was misrepresented, 2026, 2037. And whether it's misrepresented, but that's a stickler. That's a problem.
Mr. Chair, totally right, which I apologize for. But let us correct it. Let us do this right.
And that needs to be addressed. And
so-
I feel, like I said, I feel very uncomfortable moving forward with this until that item is addressed.
Let us move forward with it then. So let us make the tweaks discussed now. But like I said, I just don't want to lose the momentum we have here by saying, well, let's press pause on this and go to the planning board and deal with that and then come back What I'm suggesting is let us make the tweaks and come back and show you those tweaks. Let us get you the lease. Let us get you comfortable with, given the timeline of the lease that we now know, let us get you comfortable with the variances, which is within this board's purview, and simultaneously, or in addition, we're happy to go back to the planning board and correct the record there as well. But I just don't want to lose that momentum, and I want to get this right in front of this board.
What if it does come back as 2037? I think the planning board would review this entire plan.
I agree. So, but I think we can do both. We could have your board reviewing it, knowing it's 2037, and we could have the planning board review it, knowing it's 2037.
The only issue that I see, and the conflict between what everybody's saying, is the parking, right? The parking is one of the variances that you're looking for, and I think I've heard the concern from the board and the concern raised by the tenant in the letter is that, the number of parking spaces that you provide might be changing. And we don't know if the tenant is alleging like exclusive rights to some of these spots that might also add an additional reason for a change in the parking. So that might result in a different possible layout and a different possible number of parking spaces. So I don't see a harm in continuing the public hearing while the applicant is also proceeding to tweak the plan, give us the information that we need, you all need, the lease, give us maybe a summary of their understanding, their interpretation of the lease in terms of what the parking, what the rights are to different parking spots within that lease, right? So I think everyone needs to know that. I think the landlord needs to be sure on that. The tenant, I think, should probably be chiming in. They're a little bit vague in their letter, quite honestly. They're not saying, hey, we have exclusive rights to 9 spots or something along those lines. But they are saying, that they do have contract rights to use a certain amount of space for parking and for use at its facility, and they're suggesting, I think appropriately so, that the town, including both the planning board and this board, relevant here, should ensure that the proposed redevelopment plans are consistent with the tenant's rights. We don't know what the tenant's rights are. We don't know if you agree with the tenant. You and the tenant may completely agree, but you may completely disagree, and that might put the board in a bind. So continuing the hearing and leaving it open to see what developments happen next month, I think is rational. You could put it into October if you wanted to let this play out. It's up to you. I think there's no harm in proceeding in either way. I think the applicant, raises a point about momentum and continuing to be here, and doesn't mean you have to act in September if there's still outstanding issues, but if they're able to solve some issues and get you some data, it's never hurtful to hear what they've done in the interim, a month later instead of 2 months later. That way you could give more feedback. If it's not what you're looking for, they have the ability to give them feedback in September rather than October.
And we will also be looking for, like Johnny had mentioned, both trucks show up at the same time. There has to be a place for loading and unloading, beer, soda, chips, that kind of stuff.
Well, look, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but as I indicated, when it comes to circulation and positioning on the site, that really was already addressed ad nauseum at the planning board, and that really is their purview. So that's one item.
Again, it was based on a 2026 number.
That's true. That's true, Mr. Chair.
Because this thing wouldn't get started until 2026.
And Mr. Chair, and that's why we're happy to go back to the planning board and readdress that exact issue, Mr. Chair, with them, which is within their purview. But what really rung in my ear that I heard is it sounds like there was some discussion between you and Corey about altering the number of spaces. When we're talking about the number of spaces and providing a copy of the lease, which of course you're entitled to, we're happy to do that over the next 30 days. That is within your purview, and that's what I really want to address in September when we come back. So if we can get to an agreement on that, and if your board has concerns about how loading and unloading is going to happen and where they're going to be positioned and how traffic is going to flow, you're right. The planning board approved that based on a lease that we're now going to update them on and make changes that they may request. But let's focus here on the variances. That's what I'm asking for today. And the only thing I'll add, Mr. Chair, that I agree with everything your counsel said, I hope that I think we're in agreement. Let us come back in September
Sure.
and address that.
But we're only talking about one part of this. There's two other sections here that I
Yes.
want to address, you
And
know?
the only thing I just want to add color on that is, if there is a disagreement between us and the tenant, as I said at the top, that's a private-to-private issue that we don't want. So we want to reach agreement with them and make sure that there is no issue. But again, that should also be separate from a municipal review. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
If there are other questions, let's talk about those.
Okay.
The only spot where it may overlap is if you have a disagreement and let's say ultimately down the road, they're right and you're wrong, and then you're asking the board to provide, to give relief on the number of spots, and that might infringe on their rights. And that's all. So I think it's important for you to get together with them and this get worked out rather than it be left. I think it's perilous for you as the applicant and for the board if you're not in agreement and then you're here asking the board to give, it's imprimatur on a plan for 50 spaces or whatever they are, and that's now having the effect of taking away their private contract rights. I don't want to have the board in that position, so let's get it worked out.
We certainly have an interest in getting it worked out. The only thing, I don't know if we disagree, but the only thing that I want to make is, we certainly want it worked out because we don't want a private dispute with a private entity, not because there's any jurisdiction by a municipality to intervene in a private-to-private dispute. Let's put it to the side for now, but thank you.
Okay. I got a few other questions with some of the other aspects of this plan. Does anybody else have any?
You mean on the other variances?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about it.
And something
They went
else,
down a few hours
that the county had mentioned about the noise from the car wash. I don't know much about noise, but there's residences back there, and we certainly don't want to be impacting the residents back there when these, and I don't know what the noise decibels are for this car. I don't know. But that was something the county brought up, and I think that's something I'd also like to see that addressed too.
Okay, I see that. I'll note that I'm not sure which variance they believe that implicates or
I don't know.
or weighs on. They talk about additional noise buffering, which again would also sort of be a site planning issue if they wanted some kind of a buffer.
I don't know how
there,
you could put a muffler on a
Yeah,
car
so
wash.
we can look at that, but I'm
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there was the monument sign, which they did address, which is in.
yes, I
that's one of
mentioned
the
that at the
issues.
top. We
Yeah.
would ask for an override of that.
Okay.
You're asking us for an override on the monument sign. And why do you need to? Why do you think you need to?
There's a lot of frontage on this site. It's a wide site.
But there's also a building as big as a block, for Christ. You don't think they're going to know what it is?
I understand. Look,
Come on.
frankly, Mr. Chair, we're asking for the additional sign. We think it's prudent. We think it's the extra signage is a good thing.
I think everybody's going to know what you are.
I
you know?
understand. We don't.
Now,
think
is it only going to say storage on the sign, or is it going to sign to say car wash, there's a fast food?
Do you have a detail of that sign?
Because as far as I know, the sign only said storage, right?
Good afternoon. I'm Marino Velarde from SGW. We had submitted signage drawings. So the monument signs were planned to have multiple, address the multiple tenants, the self-storage,
So it's going to be a marquee with multiple.
they're size compliant, they're smaller. I forget the exact sizes, but I can pull them up.
I have it here, I just don't want to pull this thing out.
There's your sign here.
Yeah, it just says public storage.
It says public storage, but what's the space in here? That's going to have writing in there as well.
Yeah, so the public storage sign was for the self-storage facility that we know who the tenant is at the moment.
Now, is that going to be an LED?
No.
It's not an LED that, be underneath public storage.
Correct. So these are the two monument signs. The one that we had labeled was public storage, just because we know who that tenant is. But there were other spaces available once the owner has those spaces determined.
So underneath public storage, there's gonna be some more advertising of some sort on the sign on the left? Within the dotted lines?
No, they wouldn't all be public storage. So let's say one is for fast food, one is for car wash, and maybe one is for.
Oh,
the
so there's
existing-
gonna be, you're gonna have all 4 businesses
Correct.
noted on 2 signs.
Or maybe they're split because one's going to be on the left side, one's going to be on the right side.
But
to
yeah,
be
with
determined.
public storage and KFC or whatever it is,
Right.
and then the gas station, and I see.
So public storage, for instance, wouldn't duplicate on the other sign.
They are double-sided. Correct.
Okay, so they're not redundant, they're different, each sign is different?
Each sign is different, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
How
That's,
are they going to be
that
lighted?
kind of gives you a
Maybe,
reason
yeah,
for the second.
yeah,
How are they
that
going to
makes
be
sense. I mean,
Just vinyl.
I mean, if
They're
they put
colored vinyl
both signs are the
signs.
same.
Yeah, if there were
So
2
there's
public
not going to
storage
be any
signs, yeah.
lighting on it?
Don't believe so.
I mean, I don't have a big.
Nothing
problem with two
underneath
signs.
Isn't proposed at the
Okay.
moment, I don't believe so.
Gotta override the county on that.
Yeah, we'll need 4, we'll need 4 to find
Yeah.
it. Let's talk about the storage facility. We discussed this last week, and I know this is your business. I know this is what you guys do. I don't use self-storage. I got enough room in my house for my own garbage, okay? But there's 2 members on this board that do use self-storage. And Tim, Johnny, and you two, 3 people, okay. So the impression I got was they when they pull up to the self-storage, they might be in that loading dock for 20 minutes, half an hour. And now you're taking up half of this, almost 800 units in there.
Yeah,
And I know you think that's enough, but I'm thinking, again, I don't know, this is not my expertise and I don't use it, but
I'm usually
at least I'd like to have that conversation publicly here, so we can understand why only 2.
So we've done our
2
due diligence.
loading spaces. Yeah, industry standard. This is all driven by industry standards. So a customer comes in, they park, they unload, take it to their storage unit, and then maybe go into another parking spot, or finish quickly and wrap up. But typically, they're in and out. They're not staying for extended periods of time. So we don't see overlap. I think it's prudent for the owner to have sufficient loading, enough space for their customers, and like you said, the amount of units. So from what we've seen in the past and from what the industry typically provides is,
You've never seen queuing or anything like that? People waiting?
if there's queuing, they're in other parking stalls, people take turns. There's not a lot of traffic. The most traffic is on weekends from, middle of the day.
What are the 3 on the board
I'm
think?
usually in and out of my storage facility because it's where we stock some of our inventory, so I'm there on a regular basis.
You know what
Excuse
you're
me.
looking for?
And we're
And
offloading.
you're not waiting
and
for
We're never
anybody or anything
waiting.
like that.
There's only maybe once every 6 months, there's a moving truck there that might be a little bit in my way, but it's never been a big deal, so
So
I
you don't-
personally think it's sufficient.
Yeah, I don't have the problem either around. It's not like, it's just for the car and the bike, go different hours of the day. It's not like I'm carrying things in.
So you don't see any queuing or?
No, I generally
any-
don't
any-
have to wait, trying to access the facility itself, Now, I have a garage, so it's, sometimes somebody's in their garage and I gotta wait till they move up, or 9 out of 10 times, there's no.
Like I said, I want to have it on
No,
the
there's
public
no-
record
no
because I don't
scuttlebutt.
understand.
No,
it. I don't.
nobody's hanging out with a beanbag or a TV in the
Right.
unit.
Tim?
No, I guess I'm done all right. I've utilized self-storage before, and I mean, some of them, especially when there's several floors, you are there a little bit longer in that loading bay than you're making it sound like. That's kind of the point I was trying to make. You pull in, you unload, you got to get your cart, and wheel it in, go up the elevator to the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, whatever. Open up your unit, load the stuff. I mean, you're there for a half hour. Now, granted, the right thing to do, unload your stuff, pull your car out so somebody else can pull in while you're upstairs. A lot of people don't do that. And that's where the concern came in, that there's really not enough loading bays. But, you know, if everybody else is comfortable with it, it's, you know, I'm fine with it.
Almost 800 units.
I mean, it's a lot of units, but again, how many people are there at one time?
Now, what's the average units that you have, that you,
I don't have a unit mix with me, but it's anywhere from a 5x10 to a 10x10.
no, but I mean the number of units on,
Number of units.
It's like 790, I think, something.
I think it was 795
Yeah,
or
that's-
something, almost 800.
Correct.
But I mean, and that's this case, I mean, you say this is your business, this is what you do, you know, is this an average size facility? Or is this
Yep.
smaller or bigger, or?
It depends on the area that you're trying to service or provide for. But yeah, typically can range from
This,
700
so this is an
units.
average size facility,
Correct.
800 units and 2 parking spaces?
Two
I mean,
loading
two,
spaces,
two loading
but
dock, two
yeah,
load-
there's some additional parking as well. Yeah, I mean, I've done facilities with 1 loading space.
Really?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, there's space
Is that
like
New
we have
Jersey?
here.
No arrests.
Like I said, I'm not familiar with that, so, you know, I leave that to my colleagues here, to, you know, and they seem to be okay with it, so.
Yeah, I think I'm unique in the fact that I'm in and out a lot. I think most people put their stuff and they don't go back for months and months and months. So it's not like, yeah, it's not something where people are typically in and out.
It's not high traffic.
Okay,
No.
I have,
I'm usually the only person in the place.
I have no more questions, I don't think.
I'm good.
Let's see. We addressed the sign, and I think the county misunderstood what the sign, I think they thought there was going to be 2 public storage signs.
Yeah.
I was
think
confused by it also.
Identical signs,
Because it
right,
didn't make
right,
sense
right.
to me, but
And I'm
I wasn't
glad
gonna say that.
I'm glad we asked that, you
Yeah.
know, so.
So right now you have 1 in the middle set, and it's kind of set back,
Correct.
right? That's the large
Correct.
one. And then
And
you
I-
have the 2 on the,
I think the same is because based on the prior paragraph, it seemed to make sense. I think they made that mistake too, but it wasn't.
I understood it.
Yeah.
They actually eliminated that building on the building.
They did?
Yeah, they eliminated. Would you consider having 1 sign, 1 marquee sign?
I'm sorry, what do you mean by the one market? There is only one.
One monument
monument
sign
sign.
One
with
monument.
everybody on it?
Oh, I guess we could talk about that. Is that, you want to?
You know, I kind of get it, though.
Part of the thought too, sir, was given that anybody that's traveling along 90 that wants to turn left into this site has to do so at Pappas Lane. So we wanted to have that one closer to the intersection
Right.
that advertised that. And then as you're coming the other way from 84, you know, having the sign for the fast food and so, whatever
So
that
you
would
don't
be.
miss the sign and miss the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That
And
was
that
the
makes
intent
sense.
behind splitting them and having 2.
So it's a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
frontage is what you're saying.
exactly.
Right, right,
You have
right.
one all the way at one
I get
end,
that.
you know, you're not obviously gonna see that at Pappas Lane and vice versa.
I have no more questions. I think we should take comments from the floor. We have another guest here that would like to.
Read the rules.
Huh?
You have to read the rules, the public hearing rules.
Do I have to read the public hearing rules? We have one person here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, how many people are here to speak?
This one.
One.
I think you can waive the hearing rules.
Okay, I'll waive them.
Good evening. My name is Zedan Neshwat. I'm with Gasline Petroleum. I'm the tenant in the gas station that we're all speaking about. And we've had dialogue with the developer and their council and our council, and we're working through this. It's been positive conversations, and we're trying to get through it. But there is no question on our end, and with the developer, I don't know what the council has said, but there's no question about the 2037. That is our lease. And this is before my time, but in 1997, I believe it's 97, we as in Gasland, we put the tanks in the ground. We came to the planning board. We've got a site plan with parking spaces dedicated. So we have our rights, you know, and there was a lot of money spent on this. This wasn't like a turnkey lease where you walk in and you're operating the business. We built this place. We've been here many years, but like I said, we've had positive dialogue. We're looking to work this out and figure out a way to either coexist or move forward. And so we're not here like butting heads or anything like that. And overall, we want to see the project, and that's not a problem. But again, we don't want to. We don't want to hurt our business and hurt our rights, and we need that access. Without that access, we're going to go out of business.
Can you bring that information to us and to the planning board, everything, the original site plan that you had and the lease and everything like that?
Planning board has that, yeah.
Okay, okay, all right.
To make a, I'm sure you could find it faster than I can, but yes, whatever I could find in the next 48 hours.
That would help us out,
Yeah.
and that would address a lot of our concerns with that.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
and,
Okay.
it is a tough site, and the trucks that were shown, they weren't very accurate. Our trucks are 12,000 gallons that we use, and but by 2037, and they could restrict their site the way they like. But in the meantime, we need to operate the way we've been operating,
Sure.
and
Sure.
that's our stance.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, I have one question for you. As far as the parking goes for your business, is there a number that you would be comfortable with as far as allocated parking spaces for your business? I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to say something else.
Yeah, I'm sure we could come up with a number that's fair, and like I said, we're happy to work this out. We want to, we don't want to.
Okay, so you're kind of working with the developer?
We've
at
been
this point?
speaking, yeah.
Okay.
We've been speaking.
Yeah, so if you guys can work that out, that would be great. This way it's
Take a
kind of
lot
not on our shoulders.
off of us. Yeah.
I mean, we want you to be happy, we want them to be happy. It's a beautiful looking site.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
no,
And something's again being done
We're
with the site.
excited about the
too.
redevelopment, and yes, we are trying to, again, not to be redundant, but we are speaking. We both want to be. Neither of us want to hurt, or I don't know if that's the right word to use, but we're not trying to argue. We're trying to coexist, and we'll see where it takes us.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more thing here.
I don't mean to interrupt, but do you want to make a motion to continue that?
Yes, I'd like to make here, could somebody make a motion to continue the public hearing
I'll make a motion, continue the public hearing to the September Board of Appeals meeting.
for Basic Industrial until September 17th?
17th.
Correct.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. Could I
Thank
just add to that a motion to permit us to speak with your counsel in the interim, so that we can discuss any questions or any issues to try to streamline any concerns that your board may have
I don't have a
between now
problem
and
with
then?
that.
What are the rules on that in the town?
Custom and practices, if the board grants that permission for the sole purpose of, you're at.
It's up to this board,
It's up to
yeah.
the board.
Okay.
Do I have to make a motion for that?
What are we looking for first? Again, please?
To authorize
So let me
you,
talk to him.
Authorize you to talk to him about what?
Yes.
Yeah.
About what?
About the issues that we discussed today. Just streamlining the issues and making sure we understand what's on the table for this board, what's on the table for the planning board.
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have any problem with it. I think it could be helpful for, as we discuss what the legal issues may be, to help me better advise you all as well, and I think it would streamline things.
Okay.
Most of the municipalities don't have a barrier there. It's very common to have a dialogue between the attorneys.
I think it would be a good thing, because we're all on the same page. We need.
I agree.
Okay.
So,
We just do it for the record for escrow billing purposes, really.
okay.
Yeah.
Do I have a
I'll make
motion?
a motion for you to be able to contact our attorney to discuss these matters.
Thank you.
And a second?
Aye, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting again. You didn't want Johnny to vote tonight, did you?
See?
No, I didn't, so somebody else besides Johnny.
You need another second.
Somebody besides Johnny has to second.
I second.
Okay, thank you.
We have a quorum, yeah, we didn't decide.
Johnny, don't raise your hand, John.
Yeah,
So Isabel's not here.
be quiet, Dan. Okay, we have our next, we have a new submittal. Timely Signs of Kingston on behalf of the Heritage Financial Credit Union, application ZB 24004.
Hello, everybody. I'm
Applicants.
Tyson McCaslin from Timely Signs. On behalf of
Okay,
Mike
applicant is requesting the following variance for the construction of a 7-foot, 2-inch monument sign on the existing Heritage Federal Credit Union property there, formerly known as Rhinebeck Savings. A height variance of 1 foot 2 inches where not more than one monument sign with a maximum of 6 feet, including the base, shall be permitted. I don't want to read this whole thing, but, you know, can you show us the sign here?
Sure. So that's a digital reader board in the middle of a internally lit sign. And we're requesting the height variance just because we don't have enough room to go widthwise anymore. So one small 1 foot 2 inch variance from what's allowed there. So it's an unlit bottom base, full color LED board similar to the one you guys have right out front by the police station. Actually the same exact brand, the Watchfire. And then again, the internally illuminated topper. Has auto dimming technology, as you guys might realize from the other signs. So you know, it dims at night so it doesn't blind anybody. Not sure what the brand is of the board at Renegade Stadium, but that appears to be much brighter. The one that's right, it's actually in the foreground.
Well, these are all LEDs, these signs. You know.
Yes.
And so
How-
it will be
let me ask you
in
something.
motion?
If it's allowed, they want to do motion, but I believe that we applied for a static application. So if they want to go for motion, they're going to come back for a separate variance for that. We would like to
Yeah,
stay
there
within
are
code.
restrictions on the motions. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very familiar with it.
Now, what's wrong with the Rhinebeck sign now?
Well, actually, it doesn't look like it doesn't say Rhinebeck anymore, but it's just too short.
Well, yeah.
And they want to have the option of the digital reader board on there. And again, I would go wider if we could, but we have a setback and a property line on the one side, and we have a sidewalk on the other, so we can't go any wider. So that's why I'm asking for the height variance.
I'll be honest with you, everybody comes in front of us with signs and wants a variance. Everybody.
Is that, do you feel that the current code is too restrictive, or?
It's almost like a free-for-all now. You know?
Well, I mean, out of curiosity, we're only talking about a height variance here, correct? Nothing, everything else is to code?
I also think when we're comparing it to the size of what we might have allowed for the police department, it's a little bit different than the considerations for a bank.
Just to confirm, we're talking about the height is the only thing that's out of code, correct? Not the board itself or the size of the board, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you just clarify what you were,
For me.
okay.
No, the reason that you need to go 14 inches higher is what?
Because we can't go any wider. When you have a digital board like that, just like the Renegade Stadium one that the county owns, bigger is better. The county has a lot more space to put it, but Heritage does not.
Because it does look like there's a lot of space between Heritage and your text that's on that sign.
What would
That's
you
just
put
red-
on that
that's
sign?
just
If you're
red
gonna have a
space,
static-
right?
what do
Are you talking about where that rainbow color is?
Well, between where it says Heritage and where it says full color LED reader
So
board.
that entire rainbow, that's the grid of the actual reader board.
So that will all be,
That will have
The name of your
messages,
business.
static messages on there, yes. They'd be doing things like auto loans, home loans, different things. that they have.
rotating messages.
Correct, but not with motion, static messages, but
Okay,
yes,
static.
that's correct.
Pops
Right,
on,
but
pops
there will
off.
be,
What's that?
So it pops on, it pops off, is that what
It
you
needs
mean
to
by
hold for a
static?
certain amount of time. I don't believe there actually is anything in the code about how long it needs to stay on for, as a hold,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not looking to do any type of flashing or motion, nothing like that. And to be honest, in order to have an effective message, you don't really want that to happen. I mean, that gets attention to your message if you have it flashing, but if you ask me, that just degrades the look of your business. What goes for an effective message is when you have enough hold time to make you can actually read it. So,
Okay.
and the board is big enough that there's no need to have like a scrolling message or something like a continuing message when you have multiple parts to one message there. There's no need for that due to the size that we have shown there, which is 4 foot by 4 foot. I mean, it's not enormous by any means, if you ask me. But again, I'm only here for the height.
Has the building inspector over here?
I'm
has the-
sorry,
has the
I
buil-
she was going to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
go ahead.
Oh. Did the building inspector issue a determination whether a sign of this type is permitted under the code or not permitted under the code?
There was nothing saying that it was out of code, no. It was just the height was the issue.
Okay.
As far as I was told, so I mean, I would expect that I would be told on here about other issues if it was out of code, other than just the height.
Yeah, it's just interesting because section 150-43D5 it's just interesting the way it's worded. That's one of the prohibited signs. It says, a prohibited sign, one of the prohibited signs is signs with flashing, blinking, intermittent, or moving lights, or any artificial light which is not maintained stationary and constant in intensity and color at all times when in use, except for signs displaying time and/or temperature.
Correct. So that would mean no motion. So that would mean a message goes on, the message stays. It does not flash. It doesn't fade or do any type of video on it. If you want to read the rest again, I'm sorry, I can go back over all those different.
It says signs with flashing, blinking,
Yep.
intermittent or moving lights,
Yep.
or any artificial light which is not maintained stationary and constant in intensity and color at all times when in use, except for signs displaying time and/or temperature.
Right, because time and temperature would be usually you'd flash the time and then you would change the temperature. So it's saying that's allowed, whereas other than that, you cannot have motion on the sign.
Right. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not giving an opinion one way or the other. I'm just asking, is that something that the building inspector addressed, and is that, like he's made a determination that that's okay?
I spoke directly to the building inspector, and he said nothing about any issues with that, because the message, the LEDs in general, they stay on with the constant light. They're not flashing again. Once the message is on there, it stays on there.
But it's changing information.
Correct.
It's changing information after a
That means it is
specific hold time.
changing though, after a certain amount of time.
Of
Maybe
course,
for 10
that's-
seconds, it's showing an interest rate.
Yes, correct.
And then 10
yes.
seconds later, it's showing
That's
something
correct,
else.
but that would not be considered as motion. Motion
No,
would be
I'm
a
just,
constant.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
weigh
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
understood.
Okay.
So,
And then, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So, to me, that is changing. I mean, the fact that it looks like this at one point, and then it looks like this at another. And, so in my opinion, my concern is this. When it is moving, and I think that might be the idea behind the code, is it is, in my opinion, extremely distracting. I know when I'm driving along and I see something move, anything change, anything move, like, as you're supposed to be doing, and when you're driving, is paying attention to things that are moving, and so that does concern me. But to your point that you're here about the height, this is quite a different sign, and, another foot higher, which, maybe that's not a big deal, but when taken in its entirety, I do wonder if you can't manage all of that in the code size of the sign.
So I guess the issue that I see is the number of signs that are much higher than this allotted sign, literally within eye shot of it, including, again, the county-owned Renegade Stadium sign. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, do they put any type of motion on that sign? As in, do they keep a static sign?
It's absolutely.
County doesn't listen to us.
Okay, well, then that makes me feel better. It makes me feel better, but okay, all right, well, I apologize then, I thought that was all of this, but regardless, there are many other signs that are much, much higher. I mean, I have 6 signs that I have here that are literally within eye shot of this existing sign here. So personally, I mean, that is a 6-foot-tall person represented there. In my mind, that is not a very large sign. I mean, I understand it's larger, it's taller than, than what other signs would be, or what's allowed, but I do not feel that as very large of a sign personally.
I will say this in
wide is
defense of
this?
the changing sign, they did put up 2 brand-new billboards across from Home Depot that change, and they're billboards.
It's.
And they are a little bit distracting, I will say,
Yeah.
but they do change advertisers every 10, 15. Yeah, every 5 seconds it is.
Gotcha. And I did ask specifically if there's anything in the code about a hold time, because most municipalities, when you allow a board such as this, there's a specific hold time. I mean, we did a board at Lourdes High School, and that's only allowed to change once per day. And I think they even tried to change it once within like 12 hours, and they got called out on it. So, my client wants to follow the guidelines of that. We had a specific conversation about the difference between motion and static, and they said, we just want to get this sign going here. If we want to decide to go with some type of motion, we'd come back at a later date. It's totally separate from this. So,
Okay.
yes, they only want to have static. And again, an effective
Again, to
message
that
is when it
point, though,
stays.
It is, in a sense, motion because it's changing out. you
I
know,
guess that would be
so
the
it's
defi-
not flashing, you know.
Well, that's what the code specifically says, is not flashing, which is not, it's not going to be flashing at all. I mean,
But
I-
there is motion, there is motion, because you are changing
the
that,
definition
so-
of motion is, it would be continuous. So that's like if I'm standing here, I'm not moving. Now, I guess maybe in 10 seconds, if I jump over here, if you want to consider that motion, but I mean, you know, you can put physical videos on these things and have actual motion, or, like I said, you can do all types of things. These boards are actually, they are more advanced than you probably realize, but people are not allowed to use those advanced portions of it, and they understand that, you know, but this is important to the client, so I have to push for this, so.
What's the need?
Excuse me?
What's the need?
The need for the digital sign? Well, it
No,
does
the
grab
need
your-
for the height, the extra foot.
Because the client wanted to go with that size board, the 4 foot by 4 foot, and again, we can't go any wider. If we could go wider with the current conditions, we would have done that and not gone through the process of a variance
Well,
for.
how wide is it?
4 foot, 48 inches.
What's allowed? What's allowed? Is it 4 foot or is it, you know, I don't know.
I don't think the question is only width, I think it's the height only.
Yeah, the width is fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, width is fine.
I'm just
The height,
wondering,
14
you know,
inches.
is that extra 14 inches, what's it gonna buy you?
So
What's it
the
gonna
issue
get
is
you?
that you obviously want to have the sign off the
Another
ground.
line, one more line or something, or?
Well, and that's interesting because the way that the digital boards used to be able to say, hey, I can do 14 lines of 3-inch copy or whatever it is, but with the technology nowadays, they almost look like TV screens where you don't really need to go by that because you can use different fonts and sizes to convey whatever message that you would like. But having more real estate is always better. I mean, digital signs in general, they bring attention to the business and it allows them to not have, if you ask me, ugly letters that people put in or have to change a banner that gets sagging and looks unprofessional, if you ask me. This is a professional way to convey different messages.
And
Like I
they
said,
want the
I'm
4
just-
foot, they want the 4 foot screen, they won't go like a 3 foot screen, which would bring you very close.
Correct, yeah, they want to go with the higher one, yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's quite an investment to get one of these units, so, you know, the idea is that you get the most that you can legally get, basically. I mean, you know, because you don't want to do it, you're not going to, once the sign is put in production and it's made, you're not going to come back later on and be like, hey, let me add another foot or whatever it might be, you know, for that. So that's why the size is what has been requested here.
So in essence, if I'm understanding this correctly, let's say the foot and a couple of inches is actually like the name of the bank, so the advertisement for the bank.
Correct.
And then the screen that is debatably moving, but is for advertising of like different promotions that they're.
That is
they're
100%
having.
correct, yeah, because you don't want to waste your very expensive digital space to put your logo on, so you always have a static, you know, message of your business there. And again, you have to keep it off of the floor, the ground, so you're not getting it, you know, you don't want it to go any lower than that. Like, we wouldn't take that and just slam it on the ground. It would just be pummeled by the weed whacker and everything else there,
And
so.
what is the lighting for the heritage part of it?
That's LED internally lit, and it's only what you see as their bird logo and the text. The background does not light up. So that dark blue is opaque.
With an auto dim, you said, right?
The digital board is an auto dim.
Okay.
Yeah, the upper portion, that's just a static, it's like it's a completely separate part
I
from
get
the
it,
board
right,
itself. But yeah, traffic-wise, these Watchfire boards, they automatically dim depending on if it's darker, it ramps down. If it's brighter out, then it ramps up.
Excellent.
Does it come smaller?
I'm sorry?
Does it come smaller?
Does it come? Yes, they come smaller. Yes. They're custom, so you know you build them with blocks basically.
I'm just wondering what you would put on it.
What message you put on there?
Yeah, you know.
I mean, literally, you can do anything, but
Without
most.
having, if you put something in the middle, you're gonna have all this room up on top and all this room on the bottom. And the
It's
thing
all-
is, do you really need it?
It's all about design, right? Yeah, it's all about design.
I'm trying to visualize it in my head. You're gonna have like interest rates, you know.
Is it all gonna be on there at one time, I guess? Is that whole 4 foot area gonna be filled at one time?
Yes, yeah.
You're gonna have a border around
The
whatever you're
board, there's a
putting
very
up.
thin bezel, so basically you can see on the sides there. It might have, so these boards come with a bezel on the bottom. It's usually about 1 inch or 2, but they also have like frameless ones or bezel-less ones. But that's, you're almost end to end there. they actually look better when you have a slight bezel. 'cause
Yeah,
it
but
kind
you
of
understand what I'm
contains it.
saying, you know, with your lettering, you're gonna have borders, you know, above and below, you know. the
No, no,
lettering.
that's what I'm trying to, I'm sorry. So when it comes to a designed layout, you have that amount of space, just like a TV screen that, you know, used to have the old CRT ones that are square versus like a landscape one like this. It's how you lay out your message to actually be conveyed on that. So when you have more real estate, you're not just gonna have blank space, you're gonna fill that in with, like, say, text. So if you had, say, an auto loan, you'll have a person, you know, giving a thumbs up, or you see a car that's, you know, standing there, not moving, a car that's just sitting there, and then you can actually put the interest rate on there, or, you know, call this number or whatever it might be, something like that. And I'll tell you, usually they'll also,
So it's not gonna be
Poster,
just
it's like
lettering,
you
you're gonna.
have white, it's called white space, you have the, you know, the character, the font, whatever.
So
yeah, but so it's almost like a PowerPoint presentation with these, so you can drag and drop to put them wherever you want on that given field.
So it's not gonna be just lettering, you're gonna have images and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, I mean, that's what it would
So
take
it-
for an effective message.
Because, I mean, the existing sign is Rhinebeck Bank, and that's all it says, and you know you're going to Rhinebeck Bank, or you know you're going to Chase Bank, or you know you're going to Citibank, or what have you. Is the ultimate goal behind this sign to kind of mimic the marketing behind the Heritage ballpark and kind of go in tandem with what they already have from the county?
I honestly can't say to that, to speak to that, because I really do not know.
Okay.
I'm only here about this sign specifically. They have not mentioned a
Yeah.
single thing about the other board there. Because I know it's Heritage Financial Stadium, but I don't know if they are the ones that are allowed to control what actually goes on that board. I mean, I know that they probably have a
No,
say in
it
it,
just seems
but
like really good branding instead of a necessary need to know about the bank for me.
yeah,
So
the Renegade
that's my
Stadium
recommendation.
one, I don't believe they convey messages towards like auto loans and stuff like that. I think that's mainly for
No,
the
of
actual
course
stadium.
they wouldn't. I'm
Okay.
just saying that you have a Heritage Bank and then you have the Heritage
Oh,
Ballpark. So there's one tie
Sure,
together.
multiple touch points, yeah, that does make sense. One other thing I just wanted to mention, though, is a lot of times these boards are, we talk about the time and temp, that's part of the code that's allowed to move. But that's also a very helpful thing for these boards, because people like to look at them for that reason, so it brings your attention to it. So it would have a message, but sometimes, you can actually overlay the time and the temperature right on the message that you have if you feel like doing that. And you can also set these up so that it'll automatically turn off at a certain time. So you basically set programs so that, let's say at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever time they want to turn it off, because that's no longer an effective message. The screen goes to black and then turns back on when traffic starts again, whatever time they have set for that.
But there's
And
no
the
code for that.
upper sign will have a photo cell on it as well.
All right, I think everybody got their questions out, right?
I'm for it, because I banked there.
Well,
Johnny.
we are.
You're not voting tonight.
We're not voting tonight, we're just gonna,
You're supposed to
I want to, do I hear a motion to accept the application?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Not Johnny and not, you know. All right, Kath?
I second.
All right,
Yeah.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll accept the application, and we'll see you next time,
Thank you.
okay?
So I come back on the 17th,
On the
correct?
17th.
Is that here again?
Yes.
And is it the same time at 7 o'clock?
I'll send you a copy of the agenda if you guys see this.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Public hearings before you're done.
Understood. Yeah, listen, I waited.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great
And
evening.
thank you for your patience, you know? All right,
Motion to adjourn? Let's go home and sleep.
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's go to the hub. I haven't eaten yet.
Nice. Too late.
I have not eaten lunch today.